Let me tackle this topic of executive presence. Beyond a certain level, you are going to need some amount of kind of executive presence to be recognized for all the great work you do. Sometimes what happens is that like, if you're really great at it, and if you're in an organization that cares deeply about it, even if the person's not great at the PM job, they get promoted faster than the other PMs. And some of them actually do that much better. Not all of them, but there are some that do that really well. Okay, now what are the rest of us to do, right? Well, it turns out that it's a skill that can be built. All it requires is practice and commitment to do it. Will you have the world's best executive presence by just working on it? Probably not. Just like you can't be the world's best tennis player, I don't care how much you practice. It's just not going to happen. But don't dissuade yourself from like working on it, because there's this misconception in society that like, oh, anybody can be world class at anything. And athletes even say, oh, I'm here because I worked hard, right? So you need to understand that like, it's okay. Like you are at a 3 right now. It's fine to get to 5, and that'll require hard work. So anyway, long story short, you should be beyond a certain level thinking about your executive presence. How do you go about it? There's the public speaking element. There is the listening element to it. There is the voice. How does your voice sound? And you can actually kind of change your voice and, make it have more gravitas. It's how you enunciate. It's the words you use. And it's like your overall body language as well. Now, the tactics by themselves won't like make you great at executive presence, but they do emphasize something that you've already built. Now, you don't have to do this, but if you're highly ambitious and if you want to scale, especially the very high levels of management in most places, not all places, but in most places, you'll need to be cognizant of this. Last thing I'll say on this topic is with this kind of whole thing of written cultures, right? What's happening is that like the charisma, the verbal executive presence has become less important in the writing cultures. Now, I personally like that because I don't have the gift of executive presence. I mean, you can see I don't have a gift of executive presence. I like being in such cultures. But then what happens to some people is like, if you have great verbal presence and you join a writing culture, you're going to get really frustrated because, the same things that used to work for you no longer work because maybe you are a good writer, but not a great writer. So also be aware of why this is happening and like also be aware of like what culture you're joining. If you think, writing is a better way you can influence, then maybe consider a writing culture. So that's kind of like another way to think about how you might make moves. Now, don't do it just for that reason, but I've observed recently that people are actually able to get much farther because of these writing cultures, even though their like actual executive presence is not that great.